Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. I am, one of my values is being time conscious. So I do want to honor your time for being here. Since this is being recorded, those who missed the first bit will be able to listen to it at a later date. So again, thank you. I'm actually excited that it's just a few of us because we can actually have a conversation. Yay! Um, so as we get started, like I did before, if this is your first time joining me, thank you. I'm going to do a brief introduction again, just for those who this may be your first time experiencing me. My name is Leslie. I am in the Atlanta, Georgia metro area. I have been homeschooling, unschooling, life learning with my children since I had them. My background is in education, and so I do come out of a traditional, conventional way of thinking, but have definitely gone through a de-schooling process to where I am now. What has brought me to the conversation of community is just knowing that it is paramount for us just as people. And then when you start adding being a parent and then homeschooling, when you start adding more things to the mix, you need more people to support you. And so that's why community has been so important to me and my family. That's one of our values, that's one of our needs. Um, and the goal that I had years ago, I spent some time today rereading some old blog posts that I posted, just seeing where I have come from. But community has always been part of what I've been talking about. I want other people to do this with, so it's not so hard to do. And so I just want to encourage the greater homeschooling, unschooling community, besides all the academics, besides all the stuff of parenting and life, make sure you're surrounded by people who can walk with you through this time. Um, the purpose of this conversation we started when I started the conversation 2 weeks ago, it was on finding the community you need. And as I was preparing for that conversation, I just found out there's so much to think about. Let me break it into smaller chunks so that I don't overwhelm you all. And so last time we spoke about your family's needs. So being able to identify what your family's needs were, listing your family's values, prioritizing those, and then writing out some goals for this year, doing that in collaboration with a partner, spouse, definitely your children, so that you all are on the same page with that, and using that information to help you figure out, with all the different choices we have for communities, which one's going to be best for you. You might have found in doing this homework that you may be looking for a community that is more of a co-op where you can get involved, you're hands-on, you want to do a whole lot of different things and have a lot of options. That may be a space you're looking for. In doing that, you may have found out, well, no, I really am looking for more academic support for maybe maths and sciences with my children. I want them to be in a class situation. And so you may be looking for a hybrid community, or you might be looking for a community that is focused on more academic things. So again, knowing what your family needs, those priorities will definitely help you narrow down your search when you're looking for specific spaces. I'm going to also do right now just a quick overview of just the type of communities that are out there. Um, there are support groups. Those groups can be a subject base or philosophy base. An example would be a community that may have conscious parenting as the philosophy. And so these are parents that are already practicing that in their parenting, and they want to extend that to their homeschooling journey. There are also groups that are activity based. The example I gave last time was field trip groups. Groups that are getting together because their kids want to learn how to play chess, or they want to get together and do some sports together. There are other kind of groups that fall in the co-op or cooperative space, and those are just families that have decided we want to do a specific thing together. And again, that varies as well. You have those who are grouping for classes, you have those who are grouping for sports. They group for lots of reasons. More new to the scene are hybrid spaces. And those spaces have typically been private schools that have just opened up to say 2 days a week, we're going to let the homeschoolers in the area come in and join in for maybe music or football, or maybe it's a science experiment. More recently, there have been more hybrid spaces I know in my area that have uh, grouped based on looking for more self-directed learning. So unschoolers are now being able to show up in those spaces because they're not as rigidly put together as a typical school would look like. The next type of group would fall under intentional or conscious communities. And what I shared last time was just saying, be aware of what the intention for those groups are. A lot of them will say, we're looking for like-minded individuals. Know what they're like-minded about, so you don't end up in a space that you're like, ooh, what did I sign up for? And most of them are very clear about what they're grouping around. Last but not least are online communities. And we talked about those being very prevalent on Facebook. I suggested meetup.com as another place to find groups that can share resources virtually, can gather virtually, but also have some in-person presence. So those are the types of groups generally that are out there. I made a list of some things to be mindful of. So you might be at the I'm still looking place. So I made a list of, before you join a group, here's some things to look at. I also have a list for once you've selected a group and you've joined, or maybe you're already involved in the group, here's some things to think about. And so we're going to move into that right now. So I'm going to just give you, I guess these are 5 or 6 things to be thoughtful. So before you join, of course, you're doing your research. And I can't stress this enough. Read, 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 read. So if you are blessed enough to find a community in your area that has a website or some other social media presence, read all their information. They've taken the time to write it up, to package it, to however they're sharing the information. It may be you had to write in, or you had to email in and they sent you an email with documents in it. Or maybe there's the website and the about me and who we are and what do we do. Read all of the things that they have available to you, because more than likely, they're going to answer most of your questions there. So the basics of where do we meet, when do we meet, how do we meet, what do we do, what are the ages, what is the commitment, what are the fees, what side of town. Those are things that we all have questions about, but those are readily available in those ways. And that way, when you do reach out to the group, your questions are actually a bit more than just the basics. I say that as someone who has been a part of a space as well as someone who organizes a space. A lot of the resources and time and energy that people organizing are using, they've taken the time to share that information up front. So do yourself the favor of just let's read all of that they have available to you. The next thing I say is definitely reach out. If you have a question that is not covered, or you have a situation that they haven't addressed and you want to be sure before you come in and be a part, go on and reach out and ask. And then I tell folk, and believe people when they tell you stuff. Even if it's like, oh, I'm not sure about that, believe them. Most people, I can say, just from all the personal work I've done, most of our things are personal, and no one else is carrying your thing around with them. The next tip is to follow whatever the steps and procedures they have for getting involved. And so it may be you have to attend an online session at this point because of COVID. It may be they have a website with a video that they want all new families to watch. It may be, here's a set of documents we want you to read through and sign. Whatever those procedures are, do those. This next one is about your personal work. The biggest lesson I've learned over the years from being in community, facilitating community, leading community, is the amount of personal work I've had to do to be able to show up with other people. And you don't want to discount that. That actually makes being with other people more and more meaningful over time. And so What I would suggest for people who are looking for a space, whether you're looking for an intentional community or just a place to drop your kids off for science lessons, you want to be as self-aware as you can so that when you show up, you're actually showing up as the person you want to be. A lot of times, we may not have someone to echo back to us how we come off. A couple of years ago, I got in touch with some people I trusted and asked for their feedback on how am I showing up this way? I want to do this. I have an intention to do this. These are the things I say. How does that actually match up with how I'm showing up? And I was surprised by some of their responses, but it gave me the needed perspective of, hey, this isn't matching up, and I really want it to match up. And so I would say definitely do that work. This is work that would be ongoing, of course. This isn't a one time and it's fixed forever. But this is a way to start paying attention to the way in which we show up in a space sets a certain energy about us with other people. And so as you're learning new people, they're learning you too. And just like um, you want other people to be true and authentic in who they say they are, you want to be that too. That also goes with how you model for your children, because we're looking for communities not only for ourselves, but for spaces for our children to come as well. And so you doing that work with yourself and then having some talks with your children about that. What does it look like when you're nervous? Does it look like you're angry? Does it look like you don't care? Or just what does it look like when you're excited? Does it look like you're bullying? Does it show up in ways that we don't even intend? So that's a way in which you can be doing some work before you even come into a space that you're aware of. The next thing I would say is commit to it. Once you've found the space, once you've gotten your questions answered, once you've talked to the people organizing, once you know that, yeah, this is the space, commit to it and then invest in it. And what that looks like, of course, is different from each of the spaces that you would encounter. If it's a support group and they do more hangouts at the park, you want to commit to coming to the park days. If they say, we get T-shirts or we do lunch on a bi-monthly basis, and so we want people to bring up a meal for our potluck. Whatever it is they're asking for, you want to be able to say yes to. It may be where the group you join, maybe it's a co-op, and so they're pooling their resources so that they can pay a teacher, pay your part. Find out what those things are, and then wholeheartedly show up and commit and invest. So that's what I would say definitely to do before you join a space. So maybe you're already in the stages of, I found a space, I know this is my space. Now I'm just ready for getting involved. Of course, now with COVID, that's going to look different, but these are still some things you can be mindful of. This next list, I have about 8 things. So the first thing you want to do when you show up and you get involved and you're paying attention is you want to learn the culture of the space. Um, there is a learning curve that I tell people between what you've read about, what you've talked to people organizing about, to what it actually is when you show up. Most spaces have at least maybe some guiding principles or some mutual commitments or agreements, or even just some basic rules that they're all grouping around. Those things show up differently in practice. And so you want to pay attention to, how do they practice this? They said they wanted everyone to help out, but what does helping look like? Which leads me to my next one, being helpful in the space. The easiest way to find out what help looks like or what help is by asking, simply saying, hey, how can I help? Some co-ops want you to help with cleaning. Some of them want you to help monitor the children. Some of them may be looking for ideas and input. And so learning what the culture is, how to help, will make your experience as a new family easier as you're coming into a space where there's usually already relationships. And that can sometimes be difficult to get into a group that already has their vibe. So giving yourself permission to be observant, to pay attention to how this shows up can definitely add to the ease of you joining a space. Another thing to think about is being able to offer feedback. As a leader of a space, feedback is really crucial for me. And so I'm often asking, how did this go? How did you all like this? How did your kids respond to this? Um, and it's not always, while people hear it, they see it, they may read it if it's posted, not everyone will respond. And so I would say, if you're asked for feedback, even if you have to say, hey, give me some time to think about it, I can let you know the next time. You know, you may not be someone who can give feedback on the spot, but always be willing to offer some honest feedback, because that helps a group adjust and grow. If they thought this was a great idea and it ended up being a flop, you know, them knowing that, yeah, this didn't go so well, or maybe if we did it this way that next time, or my kids really love this, can we do this again? That type of feedback helps the group, and it also helps you see yourself as part of it. The next two things go together, being open to the new friendships, the new relationships that you're going to build in this space, and then being honest. Um, that sometimes seems tough. Uh, there are some people I'm in community with, and we've created this joke between us where we say, "Don't send your rep. You know, we want you to show up." And so sometimes it's easy to put on what we think people want from us, or maybe how we want to present. That faking it till we make it, I say let that go. You know, it's easier to go on and figure it out. Have the awkwardness. It's okay to be awkward. It's okay to be shy. It's okay to be forthright. It's okay to show all the way up. All those things actually help other people to do that too. And regardless of the type of group or community, that's something that most communities want. They want to know each other. They want to know the people that are in the space. And so you want to be thoughtful about going on and bringing that, practicing that. Um, the next thing is participate. I said that for the before the join, you definitely want to participate. I tell folk who are joining my community, participate, be all the way in. The first several months are crucial for you and your family to make those connections. And so the more times you can interact, the easier it's going to be to, oh, get in the groove. And then you're going to find out, oh, I don't feel like the new person anymore. Versus if you're hesitant, if you only come to one thing and you miss a couple things and you come again, it actually gets harder for some people to come if they don't jump right in and get involved. So if you already know you're that type of person, I say go all the way in. Come to everything they offer, even if you find out everything's not a good match for you. So you may join a group that has something twice a week. I would say for the first month, go to everything you can possibly go to. And then if they have a selection where, you know, choose the top 5 things that we do. Maybe you say, I'm going to go to the field trips, we're going to go to the park days, and then I'm going to the mom's night out. You know, you can pick the things that actually satisfy you, but you can know what it is for being involved in all the things they offer. Of course, expect challenges. Expect challenges. Expect them. There's going to be someone that offends you. There's going to be someone you offend. If you expect it, then you won't be, whew, I wasn't expecting that. You can say, wow, I didn't expect that right now. But I encourage the folk in my community, let's remain curious. So instead of assuming everyone is out to get you, assume that they actually mean you're good, because they do. They really do. We as humans, we're really not out to get each other. And most of the time, we're doing our best to manage our own insecurities at the same time reaching out to other people. And so know that something that may feel awkward or a slight or an offense, if you remain curious in the moment and ask, hey, what did you mean by that? Give the person an opportunity to share, you may find out that's not, you took it the wrong way, or vice versa. Maybe you've said something that offends somebody, and saying, hey, it looked like you got offended by what I said. Can I ask you what happened? You can actually build the relationship by being honest in those moments where we sometimes shy away from. If we're able to lean into those moments, we actually find that we didn't mean those things, the other person didn't mean those things, and it gives us something to actually connect deeper on, where, girl, I didn't mean that, I'm sorry, I come off that way sometimes and I don't mean to. Like, it gives people the chance to share themselves with you. And so definitely expect challenges. Um, while we typically expect them with the children, when my children are with other children, I expect they're going to have some situation where we're going to have to help them figure out what happened. Go on and expect that with adults too. We're all learning and growing. I have one caution, only one. I'm going to say it in the positive way first, and then I'll give the way it's usually heard. Um, Only join a group that you can fully, wholeheartedly, without any reservations, show up in. So if you read about a group and you're already in your mind, oh, nope, we can't meet on Tuesday, or yeah, this isn't a good time, or no, they don't have kids my children's ages. If you already see some exceptions coming up, when you're finding out about a group, even after you've joined a group and you see um, maybe something was misrepresented and you're in the space and you're seeing that it's not a good fit, you don't have to push through. It's okay to say, this isn't going to work. Um, because two things can happen that negatively impact you as well as the group. um, Being the person who always needs an exception. While most people can be gracious and understanding, that actually takes away from the purpose of a group. Always having to accommodate somebody who needs, well, we need this or we need that. Um, that takes away, and that actually can create a burden that you don't mean to create. Same thing for you. You don't want to then agree to something that someone's going to expect you to do X, Y, and Z, and that actually goes against what your beliefs are, what your values are, what your needs are. You don't want to do that either. And so that's my caution. As you're looking back through this list, as you're contemplating, as you're thinking, keep these things in mind, because these things will help you to have the best relationships, the best encounters with new people as you possibly can. So that's really the end of what I have to say. What I would love to do now is really just hear from you all. You may be working through something, you may have a question in particular. You may want some insight. There may already be a challenge. There may be something that you're already dealing with. I'd love for us to even offer support right now as you're processing, as you're figuring out. For those who would like to, who are more comfortable sharing in the chat, definitely share your question there. I will read it and we'll talk about it. But if you have a question or a comment or anything like that, this is the time now that you're welcome. I invite you to unmute and share that. So I would definitely, it's tricky now with COVID, because when I was looking, I would just show up in all kinds of spaces. I would show up at the libraries, the museums. I would just show up in different places. So it's probably hard to just show up in that same way and connect with people. But maybe put your feelers out. I was a reluctant starter, a reluctant leader. It was because I did already have some support around, hey, you do it. We'll support you if you do it. So tap into the networks you already know. You may be connected online to people. It may be through family. It may be maybe a business community. Someone in there knows there's another family that's doing that. Um, the next part of this conversation is about creating a community. And so I invite you to come back to that one. Definitely. I'll share some how to get started and all those kinds of things in that conversation. But you might still be surprised by who you're already connected to that you don't know. Um, in talking, I was at a drive-by graduation this weekend for a family member, and one of the side conversations I had, because everyone's talking about what are we doing this fall, um, came up they didn't realize I was homeschooling. And here I've been homeschooling this whole time thinking everyone in my family knew, and they didn't. So you may already be connected family wise to someone who's doing it. So I would just say tap all of your networks. Don't leave network unasked in, that you just say, hey, do you know anyone who's doing this? Do you know anyone in my area that's doing this? That may be a good starting point, at least. Anyone else with a question or a comment?
So we're a military family. And so I just kind of wanted to share from that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
We are constantly moving. So there
Yes.
are certain organizations that I immediately look for when I get to a new duty station. So I generally try to find the association of homeschooling families of, whatever the location we are, because they generally have a database. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's kind of where I get my initial list, because I know that the groups that they're showing have a little bit of longevity. They'll give a great description. They have a working connection, and they can kind of, help me find that what's out there currently, so that I'm not trying to recreate the wheel, or there's something I really needed and I was here a year and a half and didn't know about it. And then I also go national. There's a national, the HSLDA, that they have some great resources to find those communities. So that's just one thing I kind of wanted to impart from us moving so often,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
finding that one thing. It doesn't have to be called the same name, but there's always an association of something.
Yeah. And that is true. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
So.
I am finding most people want something more than surface. There are people who can function in surface very well. I'm like you, I don't. I think most of us don't. That's the truth. That's what I believe. I think we've gotten so comfortable being surface with each other because it's easy.
Yeah.
And so I will tell you, when I started finding my people, it was online initially. It was making connections. Like I had a friend in Canada and then one in New Zealand. We were all across the world from each other. And I was like, why are we not together? But I kept that, they kept me going while my children were younger, until I found the people locally, until I was able to grow something more intentional with people here that I am. So I don't discount the online connections, because that can feed you during this time, especially now when we're all kind of still. And let that be the encouragement of, you are going to find your people. One of my practices is calling people up, whether it's in prayer or meditation. I've talked to people and I've said, hey, if you know anybody who's in this area looking for, send them my way. I have found a lot of people through other people who say, talk to Leslie, and some of them are in my community presently and have been. So you'll be surprised how these online connections, these online friendships can actually sustain you until you get to that, oh, now there's someone down the street, because they've heard you talking about it. So yes, keep doing those things, Kate. Be encouraged.
Thank
You
you.
will not be this way forever. This is a beautiful time in that people are we're just seeing more clearly things that have been true all along, but the busyness of life has slowed us down enough to pay attention to the fact that we need something more than talking about what you make for dinner, girl, or what shoes, or, all that. Yeah. I want to know who you are. What are you thinking about? How are you feeling? What are you doing to bring joy into your life? Those are the kinds of conversations I love being involved in, the ones that make me pause and I have to think about what the answer is. I don't know the answer. Let me sit with that for a second. So you can definitely use this time for that as you're still looking, hoping, praying for the people in person. Thank you for your question. And I'm going to give you my best at this. I would
Uh,
first ask you to think about what your concerns are so that
okay.
you can, what are the concerns? Sometimes we have to sort through our feelings to get
Right.
to what the actual concern is. So I would say take the time to go through all of the things. You know, you may be, I'm a writer and I like to write, like I'll write out everything and then I look back and say, okay, this is what the point is. So that
Mhm.
I don't have to necessarily share all my feelings about something to share the
Mhm.
actual concern.
Okay.
Um, a second thing to think about would be if it were you, if you were the
Mhm.
mother and someone was having the concern with you, how would you like to be approached? How would you like the conversation to go?
Okay.
And write those things down. You know, do you want someone to be upfront? Do you want to
Mm.
know ahead of
Mhm.
time? Like, so do you say, hey, you know,
Sure.
I'm having something that's a heavier conversation I'd like to have with you. When might you be available for that? I find that setting up time in the future, giving the other person heads up helps them. That helps me. And that I have found that I haven't had anyone to say no to that. It gives them the time and the opportunity to say, oh, what's going on? You know, and then
Yeah.
even be in the mindset to receive that information. Because sometimes
Mhm.
there are things that we're just not ready to hear. It's not
Yeah.
that we can't handle them. And so being thoughtful of her in that way of saying, hey, I've noticed something, whatever the concern, I've noticed something with our children or like whatever it is. Um, I always try to think about myself in that situation. If someone is coming to say something to me about my child, we are mommies. Like we
Mm.
go into
Mhm.
mommy bear, so
Exactly.
you don't want
That's
to awaken that. So
Yeah. Yeah.
unnecessarily. And so just being thoughtful about those steps
Okay.
may help you in how to approach her. Any other comments or questions? That was a good one. Yes, you can ask another one. Jump right in.
I guess I wondered, those of you who have older unschoolers, what would you say? Do you have a lot? Do they? And I guess you have a lot of friends that are in the traditional school system, because I guess I find that with unschooling, especially, it's not just about a substitute for school, but it does seem to, it's your whole life kind of changes
Hmm.
and goes through, you're questioning everything and doing that. And I find even now that the friends we have who are going more that traditional route, it's a little harder to, have those kind of conversations, because I just don't believe a lot of the things
Hmm.
that they believe about what we should be doing and what's going on. So I guess I wonder, do you find that that just naturally happens, that you find other unschooling families mostly that you're friends with, or do you and your children have schoolish
Hmm.
friends
Hmm.
as well?
I well, for me, I have teenagers now. Two of them have been blessed to have friends that they've grown up with that are homeschooled, not necessarily unschooled, but homeschoolers. So
Mhm.
they've been in community with them for a while. I do have one daughter that has more school friends because she was taking dance classes. And so she was, I think, one of two homeschoolers that was in the program. So most of her girlfriends are in school. And she's only been unschooled, and so that's the only perspective she's ever had. And so she has always found it amusing that they think I don't know anything, mommy. They don't think I can do anything. They're always surprised. um, but I know that her friends, they usually do things more on the weekend because school.
Mhm.
And my other two have had friends that they can pick up during the week, whatever, whatever's convenient for the families. And so it really just depends on where your children are, who they're with. That's what I would say. I think most of our schoolish friends in general are family,
Mhm.
and as opposed to just people around, other than neighborhood kids. So yes, there are neighborhood friends that are schooled. So yeah, for me, it's been both.
Yeah, okay, I will. And yes, like you, Leslie, mine's are teenagers, as I was saying before. And the same thing as Leslie was saying, my daughter, she's in dance, so she tends to have more friends that are in school now, but they've both been unschooling for a while and started out homeschooling. So they have friends that do homeschool, and because we travel, we're not by them right now, but they communicate with people online. So we do a lot, online things now, and they still stay in touch with them. But my daughter seems to have more friends that are in school, and that does affect her in a certain way, because like certain things she couldn't, like we were all the way in with her, unschooling with her. Like she wasn't, because they don't practice writing a lot. So she wasn't equipped with writing, and she entered dance, and this was when she was 12. So she had a really challenging time at a camp one time, and it really it affected her in a way, like it made her a little bit more hungry and a little bit more competitive for things that she hadn't really hungered for to learn, because now she's like, okay, well, they're there. And although she's like really brilliant, and I have to continue to remind her, like she has so much knowledge and is just brilliant in so many different ways, that, I continue to encourage her by saying, like, now that you're interested in learning those things, you'll catch on very quickly, because your motor skills are, enhanced, your knowledge of things are better. So as you want to learn that, as you go and you've taught yourself so many other things, and you will catch on with that very quickly. So I continue to encourage her, but that did affect her in a way, with having friends newly to dance, and she wasn't acclimated to some things that she had been doing before, because we just didn't enforce it. But now it made her more curious and say, I really want to be better at this now. I want to do this now. And so it's like, it's given her a bit of drive. So now she's really focused on academics, and she's completely interested. And so I'm excited for her in that aspect, but I continue to encourage her by reminding her how brilliant she is on other aspects that people have no idea, that, school children, because they are, taught through rote memory, certain things there, and because they've had to learn these things a certain way, now she has different knowledge, like travel, that they wouldn't know anything about, or, just different things, common sense. So yeah, so that's something that we've run into as far as like the differences in school children, unschoolers, as far as my children go.
So we're going to come to a close with this conversation. I'm so glad we got to have an actual conversation. I like this kind of stuff. I want to give you 2 recommendations, since we were talking about personal work, for yourself and your children. I have read one of these books in the community that I am in, and we're going to be reading the second book. They don't know yet. I'm going to tell them later. But the first book is called Friendships Don't Just Happen. I tell people, take off the girlfriends and it can just be friends, because this is boys, girls, everyone else. We don't often talk about how to build relationships, unless your parents or the people who raised you were intentional about talking about that. We don't really talk about it. We think it just happens, and it does not. And so being real thoughtful for yourself, and then definitely with your children, so that they can be intentional about the friendships they're cultivating. It's a personal workbook, definitely. This is another book, you may have seen it, The Art of Showing Up. This is heavy lifting personal work. The book title, of course, makes you think, oh yes, I need people to show up in my life. And the first half is about you. The second half is about them, but the first half is your work. So I would highly recommend getting this book, reading it, talking to your children. Again, this is something that you can use just to help your family know yourselves. A lot of what I've already shared in the previous conversation, and this one you'll see echoed in this book too. I want to invite you all back to the next conversation. If you're seeing that I'm ready to start a group, or I'm thinking about it, or you might have some friends you want to come together, I would invite you back to that conversation. It's going to be very similar to this one, where I'm going to give some tips. I want to talk with you about some things, get your feedback, and interact with you that way. I love it. This was a very good one for me. Thank you. I invite you all to be in contact with me. You can reach me at Leslie W. Bray, Bray, at gmail.com. And I'm under that on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. Those are Leslie W. Bray. You're welcome to follow me. I am planning some more conversations about other facets about unschooling, homeschooling, and just how we learn and grow with our children. And so I just want to leave you with the encouragement that if you do the work and if you have those intentions, you're going to find the people that you need. You probably have already found them. You just haven't known that. But even if you haven't found them yet, know that that's going to happen. We are going to live through this. I tell my children every day, people have lived through pandemics. We don't know when this will be over, but we're going to live through it. And so just hold on to that encouragement. Know that you are going to find the community you're looking for. Start doing your own work so that you're ready for them when you find them. So again, thank you for your time, for participating. I enjoyed hearing from each of you personally, and those of you who engaged through the chat. I wish you all well, continue to be well, and I will see you soon. Have a good evening, everyone.